Hello and welcome to High Point Music. My name is Lewis, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the new 3.0 firmware update from Line 6. This update features quite a lot of new additions and upgrades to effects, amps, some bugs, some troubleshooting, this sort of thing, across the entire Line 6 product range. Of course, I'm only focusing on what's in the HX Stomp because that is my Line 6 product of choice. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the features that I have been looking forward to the most, because there are quite a lot of updates that I haven't quite gotten through yet. And then I'm going to make specific videos about each of these upgrades so that you can sort of see where you're coming from learning with our videos and where we might be able to take it with this new firmware. So let's jump in and have a look. First step of getting the most out of your Line 6 3.0 firmware update is to hit the subscribe button below. I'm going to be making quite a few videos about this particular update because as I mentioned, there are some features I've been really looking forward to, so make sure you check it out and keep up to date with the new videos. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can of course do so via our support links below as well. All right, so Helix 3.0. One of the big changes that they have made to the Helix product line is the way the DSP processing is handled. Now, for those of you not aware of it, DSP, digital signal processing or digital sound processing, is the capacity of a product to be able to perform a particular amount of work. So every effect, every amp model, microphone, EQ, every effect block that you can access in the HX series products has a requirement of DSP. It needs a certain amount of power to be able to run that effect. For example, if you have 10 effects and they all use 10% of your DSP, you could dial 10 effects up. If you had one effect that was incredibly heavy on its DSP usage, you might only get that one effect in. Now, depending on the hardware you're running will determine the finite amount of capacity you have. The HX Stomp is the least amount of DSP processing, but the general process is relevant for those other products. Why am I talking about DSP processing? I'm talking about DSP processing because if we jump over here to the overhead view, you will see that where we used to have 6 available blocks to put our effects in, we now have 8. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 effects blocks. Now this does not mean that we get more processing power. What this means is that we have the ability to use more effects if the DSP allows it. So we don't all of a sudden have 120% DSP. We have the ability to break our DSP usage up amongst a greater number of effects blocks. Now, a lot of people who've been building rigs out of these might have found a little bit of limitation with the DSP power processing. It is quite simply just the limitation of this hardware. But there are a lot of little effects that you could throw into a rig to help create tones and help add some really useful features to your effects rig or your amp rig. The 2 extra blocks you could use to do things like EQ. They don't use very much DSP processing and they're a very, very functional and usable effect. You could do a volume pedal, which in the case of just a regular stage performance production is an excellent feature to have just for killing all of your signal at the start or the end of a song. Really makes for some good live production. You could throw in a wah. A wah doesn't take up very much DSP. You could do some parallel routing. Now, interestingly, if you've watched the parallel routing video we released last week, you will notice that you still only have 6 effects blocks, or you had only 6 effects blocks to do some parallel routing in. Now, we'll jump back over here, you will see that if we grab one of these blocks and we move it to path B, you'll notice that we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks. Now these 8 blocks are dividable between both paths, so you could essentially have 4 effects in one block and 4 in another, whether it be amplifiers or effects. So you're getting more processing ability, more ability to throw some of those finishing touches onto your tones. The other big advantage I see of the extra 2 blocks is the HX Stomp has the facility to run 2 external effects loops. Now you could put your favorite overdrive, your favorite fuzz pedal, your multi-effect programmable delay pedal into either of these two loops and use them at the same time. Now, if you wanted to switch those effects loops in, you can select an effect block. So if we go in here and you scroll down through to our send and return loops, and we go over here and you go into effects loop left, and then over here we go over same way into our, send and returns, effects loop right. Essentially, you could have your favorite fuzz pedal dialed in here, and then you probably wouldn't run it there. You'd probably move it down here over to the start of the, and then this one you might have your favorite reverb pedal in the hardware effects loop. By doing this external switching, and we'll do a video on exactly how to wire them in and what you can do with it, it gives us the ability to throw effects in that we may otherwise use DSP for, and so it gives us more scope to create rigs in the HX Stomp. And it means if you've got something really boutique or something maybe you've made yourself that you really, really like, you've got the facility to throw it in where perhaps the Line 6 modeling quite hasn't got your exact effects modeled. So being able to add additional controllable, tweakable parameters by having those additional effects or by using an external effects loop, both external effects loops, I think is a really powerful addition to the Line 6 HX Stomp. And I have been looking forward to that because I want to build a pedal board and have my timeline and my Mobius in the effects loops, maybe a tuner out board so that I can kind of get as much of that processing as I possibly can just using the Line 6 HX Stomp. So I've been looking forward to that, and I'll do a video on building a rig with some effects blocks coming up very shortly. Let me know in the comments below if there's a particular effect or something you'd like to see done with those effects loops. Cool? Cool. Okay, next feature. The next feature that I have really been looking forward to is the ability for us to save our favorite effects and the ability to default a particular setting to an amplifier. So in this example, I have here my JCM 800, my very first non-practice amplifier. The big amp I got when I first started playing guitar was a JCM 800. I was very lucky to pick it up at a bargain price from a guitar teacher who was clearing a bunch of his gear that he didn't use. So I'm very fond of the JCM 800 sound. A good friend of mine shared this particular JCM 800 patch with me, and I really like it. So what I can do now is every time I dial up a JCM 800, this is the sound I want to bring up. So what I've got is the ability to save it as either the effect default, so every time you dial up the JCM 800 out of this, it brings up this amp, or you can save it as a user favorite, so that you can choose either the factory default JCM 800 tone or this JCM 800 tone. Both sound good. Here's how you do it. So we're going to go over here to, let's just jump out to our performance mode. You can see here we've got our effects and bits and pieces plugged in. We go into the home view to look at our effects blocks. Now it's quite simple. What we do is you select the effect that you really want to, that you like and you want to save. We hit our action button and scroll across with the pages. Now these pages here are new. So we have our add to favorites and we have our user default. Now let's make it one of our favorites. So all you simply need to do is just touch this scroll wheel, click, and then add new favorite. So favorites, British 2204. So when we now go in to build a new rig, let's scroll down here to something. Here we go, here's a JCM 800 rig that I like, and I'm going to choose a new amplifier. So we're going to scroll all the way out and all the way up to the top of the blocks. And then we have this favorites folder, and in it is my 2204, which sounds a bit like this. So now every time I dial up a rig and I want to use that particular tone, it's available very, very quickly. I don't have to spend time copying settings and saving a preset and moving the preset and then deleting the blocks that I don't use. It's really circumnavigated quite a lot of menu diving, and I think that's a fantastic feature. So the other side of the favorites function is the ability to replace the factory default amplifier setting with your own setting. So if you build a lot of rigs on the fly and you've spent a lot of time developing each amp's tone and you want to be able to dial it up and grab that sound every single time, separate to your favorite settings, you can of course do that now. So the way you do it is, and you'll see that we've got this tone saved here, it's our favorite because I've got a little star there. You quite simply hit your action button, scroll over here, and you can either select the factory default for that amplifier, or, pardon me, or you slide over here and pick the user default. So it sets that user default as that amplifier. So we just quickly save that rig. And then now when we scroll to a new preset, like this one, we dial out of here. So we've still got our favorite preset, but when we come down to amp and cab and guitar, we can scroll through British 2204. So you get that ability to really customize what the standard tones in your pedal are, which to me is a great way of pushing forward and being able to dial up tones really, really quickly, which was one of the downsides, I suppose, of this pedal, is the learning curve and how long it takes to menu dive. So once you learn that menu system, this is a way you can really simplify it and get from making sounds to playing much, much faster. And I think that is a huge improvement for any malting effect pedal, any modeling effect pedal, any menu diving effect pedal, because it's all about making sounds, not about staring at a computer screen. Agreed? Agreed. Cool. Awesome. And so just to finish up, there are a couple more features that I think are really worth mentioning. The first of which are we've got some new overdrive pedals. We've got some new fuzz pedals. There's a new delay pedal, some polyphonic pitch shifting, some really, really cool additions to the effects blocks. And of course, there are some new amplifiers. So I've been really interested to see those. I'm going to make specific videos about those particular pedals. If there's one in there you've particularly seen that you're interested in, let me know in the comments and I'll try and punch that out first for you. One of the other additions they've done is there's the ability to have some spillover in presets, which I think is really interesting. That's going to be more relevant for bigger hardware users than the HX Stomp because it is a DSP limited function. We've also been given some new cabinets for those amplifiers, and one of the other features I've been looking forward to is you can now use the HX Stomp as a MIDI controller. So instead of just receiving signals and passing signals through from a third-party MIDI controller, you can use this as the MIDI controller. That would be relevant if you had other pedals plugged into this. I talked about the additional blocks giving us the ability to plug some a Strymon timeline or something of that nature in. So you can now use the additional effects blocks to switch an external device in, and you can use the MIDI command center that is now built into the HX Stomp to control those pedals via MIDI externally without the need of a third-party controller. Now I have a third-party controller. I use a Morningstar Engineering MIDI controller that we have not done a video on yet, but I think being able to compare the functional practicality between the MIDI controller as a third-party device and using the HX Stomp as a MIDI controller will also be a pretty fun feature and a great video to explore. So again, let me know if you have any questions or comments regarding that particular video below, and we'll get those dialed up and filmed up as quickly as we can, and yeah, start mucking around with what 3.0 does. So that's my little breakdown on the Helix 3.0 updates. There are 12 pages of updates to this. I could go on, but that's what I've been looking forward to. More effects blocks, more amplifiers, more effects. the ability to save user presets in a way that allows us to access it much faster than some creative saving and moving of presets. The spillover function, the MIDI control function, I'm very much looking forward to exploring. So thank you very much for watching the video. Don't forget to give us a like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.